At the recent concluded 7th New Automotive Supply Chain Conference, the discussions among OEMs and the leading suppliers gravitated toward three themes: resilience, stability, and the emerging logic of localization. Topics such as technological innovation and cost reduction received far less attention, not because they are unimportant, but because they have already become the default setting of China's automotive supply chain, happening every day at high frequency. In this episode of Tina's Talk, we turn our focus to the great divergence of global supply chains, from localization to globalization and now the geolocalization. We explore how political reliance are rewriting the architecture of the global automotive supply chain. Over the past 30 years, we have been accustomed to explain the competition in the automotive industry through technology and market. However, the pandemic, geopolitical conflicts, and trade barriers have changed everything. Today, automobiles are no longer just a symbol of industrial competition. They are entangled in a deeper global geopolitical and industrial security struggle. Energy security, critical minerals, key components, data compliance, and supply chain resilience. These are becoming new variability influencing the industrial's direction. The global automotive supply chain is undergoing a fundamental shift from a focus on efficiency to emphasis on resilience. For every country and every company, ensuring autonomous and controllable supply chain security is no longer an optional issue, but a mandatory survival course. In 2022, the Russia-Ukraine conflict erupted. Europe faced the energy crisis. Natural gas supplies dramatically decreased, and electricity, raw materials, logistics, and labor costs skyrocketed, forcing automotive factories to scale back. This crisis presented European industry with a new challenge. Can the high efficiency of globalization withstand the high risks of geopolitical conflict? Soon, several companies took action. BMW and CATL joined built a battery factory in Hungary. Volkswagen signed a long-term supply agreement with Argentina lithium mines. Continental built a connected vehicle products factory in Romania, and Stellantis proposed a nearshoring strategy. Europe's industrial logic is being forced to be rewritten, from resilience on single suppliers to a diversification plus localization prosecute model. A more profound change is that more and more European companies are now incorporating supply chain stress testing into their annual strategies, extending the inventory cycle for key minerals, and promoting battery recycling and solid-state battery research, shifting from a cost-driven approach to a resilience-driven one. This conflict serves as a stark reminder to everyone: without energy and supply chain security, there is no national or industrial security. When Europe faces an energy crisis, the geopolitical struggle between China and US is reshaping the global supply chain landscape through technology and regulations. In 2022, the US Inflation Reduction Act was introduced, with new electric vehicle tax credit requirements. Vehicles must be assembled in North America to qualify for subsidies. At the same time, localization thresholds were set for key minerals and battery components, with annual increase. If battery components are manufactured or assembled by foreign entity of concern, or its key minerals are mined, processed, or recycled by FEOCs after 2025, the vehicle will not be enabled for the maximum $7,500 tax credit. As a result, some Chinese batteries and mineral companies are effectively excluded from the subsidiary systems. Meanwhile, the United States has continued to tighten export controls on advanced chips and semiconductor equipment, restricting China's access to high-performance computing from autonomous driving to AI. NVIDIA rolled out downgrade China-only versions, such as the A800 and H800, to meet earlier control thresholds, But as the rules were further tightened, even these reduced spec models have come under stricter limitations. On the battery side, Ford's LFP project with CATL in Michigan adopts a struggle designed to navigate U.S. political sensitiveness and comply with the IRA as much as possible. Ford owns 100% of the plant, builds and operates the facility on its own, and merely licenses CATL's technology in return for royalty payments. And two recent news stories have set new shockwaves through the auto industry. Reuters reported that GM has instructed thousands of suppliers to phase out Chinese components and raw materials by 2027. The Wall Street Journal, meanwhile, reported that Tesla is asking suppliers to avoid using made-in-China parts when supplying its United States factories. These developments have reignited discussions around the emergence of dual supply chains. The result is that the global automotive industry supply chain is being pushed towards a new structure of dual-track plus block-based supply chains. First, the two-track supply chains. One track serves the Chinese market, relying on domestic partners such as CATL, BYD, and Horizontal Robotics, etc., forming a complete ecosystem from new energy to intelligent vehicles. The other track serves North America and Europe, primarily relying on Japanese, Korean, and Western supply systems to meet IRA, FEOC, and EU localization regulations. Second, blockification of supply chains. Global supply chains are no longer determined by efficiency optimization, but are being redivided based on geopolitical blocks. The first one is United States, Europe, Japan, Korea forms a bloc with policy and supply chain coordination. The second is China, ASEAN, Middle East, Latin America gradually forms another bloc centered around industrial capabilities. The third, emerging economies with strategically balance and choose between these two blocks. At the same time, the logic of globalization is undergoing a fundamental shift from a unified global supply chain to a parallel evolution of region for region and block-based grouping, block-based. In other words, regionalization addresses market proximity and barrier avoidance, while block-based grouping responds to the deep divisions of political camps. The global automotive industry is entering an era of multiple blocks in parallel for supply chains. This will be the most profound and long-lasting structural change in the next decade. Amid the uncertainties of geopolitics, the global supply chain is gradually evolving into a regional supply chain. More and more automakers are choosing to build factories near key markets, both to be closer to consumers and to avoid potential trade barriers. For example, CATL has established 2K bases in Europe, in Germany and Hungary, becoming a critical pivot in the globalization of China's battery industry. BYD has constructed a factory in Thailand with an annual production capacity of 150,000 vehicles and is investing over $1 billion in Indonesia to build nickel battery vehicle integrated project. Meanwhile, Japanese and Korean automakers are deepening partnerships with friend shore countries like the United States and Canada to strengthen supply chain security. For example, LG and GM plan to build a large battery factory in the United States, and Samsung SDI has invested projects with Stellantis in Canada. These layouts are seen as a friend-shoring strategy to mitigate geopolitical risks and align with the local subsidy policies. Geopolitical factors are pushing supply chain security from being a black stage issue to a forefront concern, becoming a new competitive barrier. The European Union, in its Processed Critical Raw Material Act, has set a target for 2030. At least 40% of strategic raw materials consumed annually must be processed within the EU, and a recycling capacity share of at least 15%. The US IRA also emphasized an increased proportion of friendly shore sourcing for critical minerals. These institutional reforms demonstrate that the global supply chain is shifting from an efficiency logic to a security logic. For the automotive industry, the companies that can build resilient, reconfigurable supply chain networks with geopolitical compliance capabilities will be the ones most likely to seize the competitiveness advantage in the future. For China's automotive industry, this is both a challenge and an opportunity. The challenge lies in the fact that overseas investments face political and social resistance. The key technology and resource supply chains are subject to external restrictions. The great opportunity, however, is that China possesses the world's most complete manufacturing and supply system, enabling it to build a multipolar supply chain globally. CATL is establishing a three-polar system across Europe, United States, and Asia, while BYD, Chery, and Geely are also built new networks through factory construction, partnerships, and investments to establish localized production, plus global responsiveness. China's automakers and supply chain companies are shifting from a cost-driven model to a resilience-driven one, transitioning from manufacturing chains to a dual management of security chains plus value chains. This means that China is no longer the world's largest single automotive market, but is also becoming a key pillar for global industrial security and the new order. It's very clear that the global automotive industry has entered a complete new competitive landscape. Electrification and intelligence are the technical driving force. Geopolitics and supply chain security are the real challenges. And the triangle revival of Shanghai, Silicon Valley, Munich is defining the strategic order for the next decade. This is not just a shift in geographic centers, but a threefold reshaping the rules, speed, and ecosystems. For China, this reshaping represents a historical leap from being the largest single market to becoming a core power center. This is Tina's talk. In the next episode, we will discuss the underlying logic of China's automotive industry leap from the largest market to a new global chain leader.